Welcome back. This week we got the pull tractor fenders completed, the steering box for the old Rome grader is back together, and we got the gold wing running. We also began work on the 94 Harley, which we haven't worked on for a while. What's in front of me is a laced wheel from a 2007 Harley, and next week we're going to show you how we're going to make this 2007 Harley wheel fit our 94. So you're going to want to tune in for that. Our new bearings are here for our grader steering box, so we're going to put those in today. Even though the other bearing was good, it was a different style, it is the same size. So we're going to go ahead and replace them since we're already in there, so the steering box will have all new bearings. We're going to set the worm drive in now with our two new bearings. There we are. Once we get her back together and full of grease, she should work like new. So last week we talked about the steering stop, and I believe that there was actually two of them for each direction. But what I'm going to do, since I'm not putting those back in, is I'm going to center the stop for the gear in its travel. So with this centered, and we'll have the steering wheel centered and the wheels are straight, then we should be able to have our movement of left to right equal and not have to worry about whether the stop is there or not. With the worm gear and the new bearings installed, I've added a layer of sealer around the outside perimeter. There had been no sealer or no indication that there was a gasket here. Sometimes the surfaces are machined so well you don't need one, especially when you're using a very thick oil in it. But I chose to go ahead and put some sealer around it and then put these two halves together. Steering box is all back together now for the grader. I'm going to spin it. As you can see, it does spin very easily. This would be the drive or the input from the steering wheel. This is the output for the wheels themselves. What I want you to notice is pay particular attention here to this out drive and how much I'm turning it. So that's 1 revolution, 2 revolutions, 3 revolutions, and this thing is barely moved at all. I'm going to put it back to center now so I don't forget, and then we go the other way. And again, you'll see very little movement. 3 revolutions here, very little movement there. I'm not sure what the ratio actually is, but it is necessary in turning something this heavy, getting the front wheels to move with no power steering and simply just using a gearbox like this. When I bought this bike a few years ago, the guy told me that the mechanical fuel pump was no good anymore and very expensive, so he put on this electric pump. After a few years of setting, it's no longer working and I can't get it functioning. The nice thing is that engine I bought in Maryland a while back, got the fuel pump off of it so I can actually put it on this engine. So between the couple of carburetor parts that I used from that engine and now the fuel pump, is definitely a good investment in buying that spare engine. Now let's put this fuel pump on and see if we can make it work. I've already had it running and done my adjustments. I didn't put the mercury sticks on this one because the idle was already good the last time I used it and I didn't make any changes. If this were a customer's bike, I would put them on there to get them a lot more perfect, but the bike ran well before, and it runs good now. So this will not be the first startup like I normally would want to do, but it does start and run really well, and I'll show you that right now. There you go. So all I need to do is get the airbox system put back on it, put the body panels and the seat back on it, and we're ready for a test drive. I'm about to spray some paint on the Harley fender. You can see some of the original red coming through the primer after it was wet sanded. The blue that I'm using is pretty transparent, so I'm going to need to have it all one color before I spray it. So not having any sealer, I'm just going to take some of my primer, mix it really thin to create my own sealer, and spray it on and do a wet on wet, which means I'm going to put the paint on almost immediately after the primer flashes. So I've got it sealed up and I'm ready to put on some paint. I'm going to shoot the blue on first to cover the whole thing. This bike is going to eventually be a two-tone, but I'm not sure how I want the second color to lay on. And a lot of the designs I've seen online are just very pretty lame. First coat of blue is on it. It's definitely a good thing we put that sealer on there because it is extremely transparent. Should take about 3 coats to get the color we're looking for, and then we can see about two-toning it. It's definitely better than that ugly Harley red or orange or whatever they call that thing. This blue is very pretty. I think it's going to look great on this bike. I'm about to put the fine line tape on now to mask off for the second color. I was having a difficult time figuring out exactly what I wanted to do. I did a lot of research, looked at a lot of different pictures of bikes, and they were pretty boring, most of them. A lot of them, what I was almost going to do was bring the second color around here and back over the fender a little bit above the taillight. But I don't want to do that. Because I might be putting white wall tires on this, and the lighter color that I'm going to put on this, the contrast wouldn't be right. So I think I'll come up with another idea. I think it's going to look good, and we'll see. I'm going to put it on. Again, like I said before, if I don't like it, I can always just sand it down and start all over. But I think this is going to work out okay. All right, you can see the light blue fine line tape on the left-hand side there. That's pretty much how I think I want this design to lay out. I'm going to let you watch me do the second one on the right-hand side, and I'll show you how I'm going to lay these out and make them even. You have to pull out a lot of extra tape when you're doing it, and also have a good sharp razor blade, or else it'll get all wavy on you. So what you're going to want to do, sorry I got the razor blade in my mouth, hopefully you can still understand me. I'm going to take and put this about where the other one is. I'm not worried about it being exact perfect yet. Then I'm going to take and roll it around and get my distance here to here as true as possible. I've pulled a lot of extra tape up here so that when I'm bringing it down, I can eye it where I want it to go, which is all the way up here. Now the tape is only touching here, but I'm eyeing here. And I'm going to bring it straight down to where I want it to be. And if I miss it, which actually I did, I can pull it all the way back up and then bring it down straight until I hit it. Missed it again, I'll do it again. I'm going to keep doing that until I get it, bam, exactly where I want it. Then I'll take and push this down with my finger, then duplicate the other side, or to match the other side, like that. Cut off extra, but don't do anything with it. So now what I'll do is I'll come back here to the back and eye this, try to get it exactly where I want it. Now this one's further to the left, and I like that look better. It's more belled, like a bell look, and I do like that. So I'm going to take and pull this one back up and try to bring this one around like that to simulate more of that bell. Now, or at least to make it more symmetrical. Missed it by a little, lift it back up. Now the other thing you want to be careful of when doing this stuff is not to pull this tape. It'll stretch, and then it's gonna, it won't be even. You'll lose your line. So now looking straight in on that, looks pretty good. I could get a tape measure and measure it, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. What I don't like is this is more rounded here and it's more straight. So what I need to do is come back further and then bring it around sharper, like that. Now I've got more of an even pitch of the bell, or the shape of it coming down. Put the center mast off for the second color, ready to put a couple of coats on it. All right, we'll let that flash off, and then we'll put a second coat on it, and we'll be ready for clear. All right, it's time to get this fender unmasked and see what we have. There we go. Let it flash off for about another 30 minutes, and we'll put some clear on it and see what it looks like from there. Now it's time to put some clear on the motorcycle fender. Here it is after one coat of clear. Get a couple more coats on it, so we'll have something to wet sand and polish to. And this will be ready to put back on the bike. The rear fender is back on the 94 Harley. Looks pretty good. The majority of that's going to be covered once the saddlebags and all go on it, but at least it's done. I'm about to shoot blue onto the two side covers. There will be no white on these two pieces. The two Harley side covers are painted and ready for reinstallation as soon as we get a couple of grommets to mount them. I've got one of the tractor fenders set up and ready to put some red paint on it. Let's see how it turns out. This is a really nice high solid red, covers really well. I think 2 good coats, we should be ready for clear. Alright, the fender's ready now to have some clear put on it. Alright, that's looking really good. A couple more coats of that and we're done. As you can see by the reflection, the fender looks really good. It's got a few dirt nibs in it here and there. We need to get wet sanded out and then we'll polish it. And this one will be ready to go. As you've seen us do many times before, we're going to wet sand some of the dirt nibs out of this paint, get it polished off, and then this fender will be completed. Okay, so right there in the center you see what's left of a dirt ring. So we're going to sand that out till it's completely gone, and then we'll be ready to polish it. Alright, the dirt ring's gone, so now we're ready for polish. Here's our fender all polished up and ready to go. You see the reflection of the clouds outside. Looks real nice. Very happy with how this turned out. We're about ready to shoot the undercoating on the other fender now. We've got it all mixed up and shook up so we've got the right color. We're going to fix the gun first. I explained to you last week that this gun had a flaw. So when you're pulling the trigger, everything seems to work fine, but then it'll kick off to the side. And then you've got no pressure to open the valve up to allow the air to go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to, where that makes contact with this piece, we're going to use our Dremel tool and put a little recess in there for that pin and force it to go into it so that the handle can't slide one way or the other. In drilling the handle, it was a little too wide, so I was going to take too much material off of the handle. So what we opted to do was take and put a copper washer, and if you see it in there, we stuck it between the handle and the gun body, and that took a lot of the play out of the handle itself. So now it works every time as it should. So that's all that was necessary. Just put a little washer in there to tighten up the handle. So we're going to use an entire quart because that's what it took last time. I've got 6 ounces of the color in this cup here. We're going to now pour it into our quart container and then give it a good shake before we add the hardener. Got our second batch of undercoating mixed up, ready to spray onto the fender. So in doing this, we're not going to be able to spray across horizontally like you normally would if you were painting a panel. We actually have to do this vertically because of these raised portions in the fender. It just makes it a lot easier to spray it on and get good coverage. Now, even though this isn't a 2-stage trigger, I'm still letting go each time because I don't want it to get heavy every time I stop at the end of a stroke. We've got the second pull tractor fender in base coat. We'll be shooting some clear on this pretty soon. Second pull tractor fender is done. We'll let this clear kick off and then we'll be ready to polish this one. Next time on Bulldog Builds, we'll have more of the 94 Harley parts painted, and we'll also see if we can get that laced wheel to fit up. We'll hopefully have the steering box back on our grader, and we might get started on this old Norton. See you next week.